if I asked you to close your eyes and, conjure up the sound of a garden in late July, there's really only one audio track that fits. It's that low, slightly erratic, heavy vibration.
The buzz.
The buzz, exactly. It's iconic. And usually when we hear that sound, the mental image that follows is, well, it's pretty benign.
Oh, yeah.
We picture the bumblebee. It's the flying panda of the insect world. It's round, it's fuzzy, it bounces off the patio furniture.
Right.
It feels like a friendly, slightly clumsy sidekick to the rest of the garden.
It's interesting you use that word clumsy because that really is the prevailing reputation.
It is, isn't it?
The bumblebee is seen as the lovable oaf of the pollinator world, especially when you compare it to, say, the honeybee, which we view as this hyper-efficient industrial worker.
Right, the organized one.
But if we actually look at the source material, specifically the biological records on the genus Bombus, that clumsy reputation, it just falls apart completely.
It does, because I've definitely watched them, crash into my window more than once.
Well, you're seeing them out of their element. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree,
It looks clumsy, right?
True.
But the mission of this deep dive is to reframe that creature entirely. We aren't looking at a simple garden visitor. We are looking at a creature that dominates environments that would kill a honeybee in minutes.
So we're talking about an extreme survivor.
We're talking about the cold weather special forces of the bee world.
Wow.
These are creatures that defy the intuitive laws of aerodynamics. They possess sensory arrays that let them see invisible forces like electricity, and their internal hive politics make Game of Thrones look like a nursery rhyme.
Okay, Special Forces is a strong rebrand from Flying Panda.
It is.
But I think to understand why they are so impressive, we have to start with the most basic question, the one that always comes up in casual trivia.
The laws of aviation myth.
The idea that they shouldn't exist.
Right.
I remember this distinctly from school. The story goes that an engineer, usually nameless in the retelling,
Always nameless.
looked at a bumblebee, measured its wing surface area, measured its body mass, ran the numbers, and declared flight impossible.
And the punchline is always, but the bee flies anyway because it doesn't know physics.
It's a great story.
It is a fantastic story about the limitations of theoretical science versus biological reality. And unlike a lot of urban legends, this one actually has a paper trail.
Oh,
It's not just an internet meme. It traces back to 1934.
so there was an actual scientist who got this wrong.
There was a French entomologist named Antoine Magnan. He wrote a book called Le Vol des Insectes.
The flight of insects.
Exactly. And in the introduction, he references calculations done by his assistant, an engineer named André Santlagi. And they did, in fact, conclude that the bumblebee should not be able to generate enough lift to get off the ground.
So where did the math break down? Because
A.
obviously the bees are flying. Was it just bad arithmetic?
The arithmetic was fine, but the application was flawed.
Yeah.
They were applying the aerodynamics of fixed-wing aircraft to a flapping insect,
Okay, so they treated it like a tiny airplane wing.
a rigid airfoil moving through the air to generate lift via the Bernoulli principle.
Which works for a Boeing 747, but not a bug.
Precisely. A 747 flies because air moves faster over the curved top of the wing, creating lower pressure. But that requires steady, smooth airflow. A bumblebee's wing is doing something completely different.
It's not rigid.
It's not rigid, it's flexible. And it's not just flapping up and down,
It's rotating, isn't it?
it's a figure-8 motion. And this is where the physics gets really interesting and, where Magnan got lost. When a bumblebee flaps, the leading edge of the wing cuts through the air and creates a massive separation of airflow. On a plane, this would be a disaster.
That's a stall.
It's called a stall. The plane would fall out of the sky.
But the bee uses the stall.
It creates a leading edge vortex, or LEV.
A vortex, okay.
Imagine a horizontal tornado forming right along the top edge of the wing. Because the air in that tornado is spinning so fast, the pressure drops incredibly low. And that low pressure sucks the wing and the bee attached to it upwards.
So they're literally generating mini tornadoes to surf on.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
This is dynamic stall. It's a high-energy, unstable way to fly, but it generates massive amounts of lift. And there's another factor that Magnan missed, which is the scale of the fluid dynamics.
Okay.
We have to talk about Reynolds numbers.
Reynolds numbers. This is a measure of fluid flow, right? Like viscosity versus inertia.
Exactly. For you or me, or a 747, air feels thin. We move through it easily. Inertia dominates.
Sure.
But when you get down to the size of a bumblebee, the air molecules feel relatively closer together. The air feels sticky.
Like swimming in syrup.
maybe not quite syrup, but definitely a light oil. The air resists the movement much more than it does for a bird.
I see.
This viscosity allows the bee to grab the air more effectively than traditional aerodynamic theory predicted. John Maynard Smith, the famous evolutionary biologist, later corrected the record.
And what did he find?
He showed that because of this viscosity, the small wings can move massive volumes of air relative to the bee's size.
So the engineering works, but only if you use the physics of the microscale, not the macro scale.
Correct. But flying this way, churning up vortices in sticky air is expensive. It burns a tremendous amount of fuel.
Which brings us to the engine. If they are burning that much energy, they must be generating a lot of heat.
And this is the key to their identity as special forces. Bumblebees are essentially warm-blooded engines inside a cold-blooded shell.
Wait, unpack that. I thought insects were poikilotherms cold-blooded. Their body temp equals the outside air temp?
Generally, yes. If you put a housefly in a refrigerator, it slows down and stops.
Right.
But bumblebees exhibit facultative endothermy or heterothermy. They can generate their own heat.
They make their own heat.
To fly, their thoracic muscles, the massive flight muscles in the chest, must be at least 30 degrees Celsius. That is 86 degrees Fahrenheit.
So even if it's 40 degrees outside, their chest needs to be 86 degrees.
Exactly. We see Bombus bimaculatus flying when the air temperature is just a few degrees above freezing. No honeybee can do that.
No way.
A honeybee would literally fall out of the air in a chill coma.
How do they bridge that gap? If they wake up in a cold nest, how do they start the engine?
They shiver. But it's a specific kind of shivering. They have a biological clutch mechanism.
A clutch?
They can unhook the wing muscles from the wings themselves.
Oh, like putting a car in neutral and revving the engine?
That is a perfect analogy. They rev the engine, vibrating those massive muscles without flapping the wings. This metabolic burn creates waste heat.
Ah, okay.
It takes about 5 minutes of this revving to raise their thoracic temperature from ambient to flight ready.
That explains why you sometimes see them on the ground just vibrating before they take off. They aren't stuck, they're warming up.
They are pre-flighting the aircraft. But here's the problem. Once they take off into freezing air, the wind chill should strip that heat away instantly.
They're tiny.
They're tiny, and they have a lot of surface area.
So they need insulation. The fuzz.
The pile. That fuzzy coat isn't just for aesthetics. It traps a boundary layer of air against the body to keep the heat in. But they also have an internal radiator system.
A radiator.
A countercurrent heat exchanger.
I've heard of this in penguins, specifically in their feet. Warm blood going down heats the cold blood coming up.
Exactly the same principle. The bumblebee's heart pumps blood hemolymph from the abdomen to the thorax.
The back to the front.
Right. The thorax is the hot engine. The abdomen is usually colder. If the hot blood from the thorax flowed straight to the abdomen, the heat would just be lost to the outside air.
So the heat exchanger captures it.
The vessel carrying cool blood forward to the chest runs right alongside the vessel carrying hot blood back to the abdomen. The heat jumps across.
Wow.
The cool blood gets preheated before it hits the muscles, and the hot blood gets cooled down before it goes to the abdomen. It keeps the heat trapped in the chest where it's needed.
That is incredibly sophisticated engineering for an insect. It essentially creates a thermal loop in the center of the body.
It allows them to conquer the globe. This is why we find bumblebees in the Arctic Circle. We find them on Ellesmere Island. We find them in the Himalayas.
There was a study in the notes about Mount Everest that I found fascinating.
Yes, the simulated altitude study. Researchers took bumblebees and put them in a flight chamber, then pumped the air out to simulate the barometric pressure at the summit of Mount Everest.
The death zone.
The air is incredibly thin up there. There are fewer molecules to push against to create that lift we talked about.
So they shouldn't be able to fly.
The researchers expected the bees to fail. Instead, the bees just changed gears.
How?
They increased the amplitude of the wing stroke. They swung the wings wider.
Not faster.
They didn't beat faster, which is energetically costly. They just reached further with every stroke to grab more of that thin air. They flew successfully at pressures equivalent to 9,000 meters.
That is higher than Everest.
It is.
So we have a heat-generating, vortex-surfing, high-altitude climber. But all of this physical prowess is useless if they can't find food. And this brings us to their intelligence, which I think is even more surprising than their flight.
It is. We tend to think of insects as biological robots, input stimulus, output reaction.
Right, like little machines.
But bumblebees show a flexibility of behavior that suggests something much closer to cognition.
So let's talk about how they find flowers. We know they like color. We know they like scent. But the research mentions a sixth sense.
Electroreception.
Yeah.
Bumblebees are one of the few animals known to detect electric fields in the air.
How does a flower have an electric field?
It's basic atmospheric physics. The ground has a negative charge. The air generally has a positive charge.
Oh.
Plants grow out of the ground, so they conduct that negative charge up their stems. They act like little lightning rods, concentrating the electric field at the petals.
So a flower is a negative terminal.
Right. Now the bee is flying through the air. As it flies, the friction of the air and dust against its body strips electrons or deposits them. The bee builds up a strong positive charge.
Static electricity, like rubbing a balloon on your hair.
Exactly. So you have a positively charged bee approaching a negatively charged flower. When the bee lands, that difference in charge sparks.
A spark.
Not a visible spark, but a flow of charge.
Yeah.
The bee effectively cancels out some of the flower's negative charge.
It grounds the flower.
Temporarily, yes. It changes the geometry of the flower's electric field. It takes minutes for the plant to pump that charge back up and restore the field.
And the bees can see this.
They can feel it. The mechanics are fascinating. The bee has tiny mechanosensory hairs on its body. When it enters an electric field, the physical force of the electricity pulls on those hairs. It's like the hair on your arm standing up during a storm.
So a bee flies up to a patch of flowers. It sees a purple flower, but it also feels the static coming off it.
And if the static pull is strong, the bee knows. This flower has a strong field. It hasn't been grounded recently. It's full of nectar.
But if the field is weak...
Another bee was just here. The battery is drained. The nectar is probably gone. Don't waste energy landing.
That is phenomenally efficient. It's an invisible occupied sign.
And it prevents them from wasting that precious heat and sugar on empty flowers. But they back this up with chemistry, too.
The smelly feet phenomenon.
I love that term.
Me too.
It's literally what it is. Bumblebee feet secrete a complex mix of hydrocarbons. When they walk on a petal, they leave oily footprints.
A scent trail.
Exactly. Other bees can smell those footprints. If the scent is fresh and volatile, they avoid the flower. If the scent is oxidized or evaporated, they know it's been long enough for the flower to refill.
So they are cross-referencing electric data with chemical data to make foraging decisions.
They are. And they are learning. This is the biggest leap in our understanding social learning.
Oh.
For a long time, we thought only vertebrates, mammals, birds could learn by watching others. We thought insects just knew what to do by instinct.
But the string-pulling experiment changed that.
This was a landmark study with Bombus terrestris. Researchers set up a puzzle. They put a blue plastic disc with sugar water in the center of a table.
Okay.
But they put the disc under a sheet of glass. The bee could see the sugar, smell the sugar, but couldn't reach it.
Frustrating.
Very. But attached to the disc was a string that stuck out from under the glass. The only solution was to grab the string, walk backward, and pull the disc out.
Did they figure it out on their own?
A few genius bees figured it out by trial and error over a long period. But here's the kicker.
How do they do?
They took those genius bees and let them perform the trick while naive bees watched from behind a screen.
The students watching the master.
Then they released the students. And the bees that had watched the demonstration solved the puzzle almost immediately.
No way.
They didn't do trial and error. They went straight for the string.
They copied the behavior.
They did. And then those bees taught a second generation. The behavior spread through the colony.
That is the definition of culture, the transmission of information that isn't genetic.
It is.
It really challenges the way we treat them. If you squash a bee, you aren't just squashing a bug, you're squashing a problem solver that might be the Einstein of its hive.
It raises some uncomfortable ethical questions, certainly, especially given how we use them in agriculture. We rely on their intelligence for specific crops, like tomatoes.
Right. I read about buzz pollination. Why is the bumblebee better at this than the honeybee?
It comes down to the architecture of the flower. A tomato flower, and things like blueberries, cranberries, eggplants, it keeps its pollen locked up tight inside a tube called the anther.
Okay.
The pollen is sticky. It doesn't just fall out.
So honeybee lands on it.
And gets nothing. Honeybees are polite foragers. They brush against the pollen. That works for apples or almonds. It fails for tomatoes. The bumblebee, however, is a brute force engineer.
What's the technique?
It grabs the flower with its mandibles, bites down hard to anchor itself. Then it curls its abdomen underneath and decouples its flight muscles, just like when it's warming up.
Ah, revving the engine again.
It revs the engine to a specific frequency.
It turns itself into a tuning fork.
Exactly. It vibrates the flower at a specific resonance, usually a middle C. The vibration is so intense that the pollen inside the anther explodes.
Explodes.
It is literally shaken loose by the sonic energy and blasts out of the pore, covering the bee's fuzzy body.
Sonication.
Yes. Without that violent vibration, you don't get good tomatoes. If you buy a greenhouse tomato, it exists because a bumblebee bit a flower and screamed at it with its muscles.
We've painted a picture of a creature that is high-tech, intelligent, and efficient. But now we have to look at where they live. Because if the bumblebee is a sleek fighter jet, its hangar is, well, it's a dump.
It's a bit of a shantytown, yes.
Yeah.
This is a major difference from honeybees.
Big time.
Honeybees are master architects. They build hexagonal wax combs that are mathematically perfect. They build vertical sheets. They house 50,000 individuals.
And the bumblebee nest?
It's usually underground. They don't dig their own holes. They find abandoned real estate.
Squatters.
Old mouse burrows are the favorite. Or under a shed. Or in a compost heap.
Squatters' rights.
Basically. And inside, it's chaotic. They build wax pots to hold nectar and pollen, but they're just lumped together. It looks like a pile of grapes made of dirty wax.
And the wax itself, the production method is weird too, right?
Honeybees secrete wax from scales on their abdomen and chew it. Bumblebees secrete it from glands between their abdominal segments, but it comes out looking like greasy flakes.
The source text called it dandruff.
It does look like dandruff. The bee scrapes this wax dandruff off its belly and molds it into these messy pots. It's functional, but it's not pretty.
And the colony structure is smaller too.
Much smaller.
How many bees?
Usually between 50 and 400. A massive nest might have 1,700, but that's rare. And crucially, the colony is annual. It doesn't survive the winter.
The whole colony dies.
Every autumn, the old queen, the workers, and the males die. The only survivors are the new young queens.
The new queens.
They mate, then go find a hole in the ground to hibernate.
So every spring, the bumblebee population reboots from zero.
Yes. The queen wakes up in spring, starving, and has to do everything herself. She finds a mouse hole, builds the first wax pot, lays the first eggs, keeps them warm, and forages for pollen.
A single mother working 3 jobs.
Until her first daughters hatch to take over the labor. Yes.
That makes the colony feel much more vulnerable than a honeybee hive. If that one queen gets hit by a car in April, the whole potential colony is gone.
Exactly. The bottleneck is extreme. And because the nest is small and often unguarded compared to a honeybee hive, it is vulnerable to invasion. This brings us to the villains of our story.
The cuckoo bumblebees. Cythyrus.
This is a subgenus of bumblebees that has evolved to be the ultimate freeloader. They are brood parasites.
Like the bird?
Just like the cuckoo bird. Over millions of years, these bees have lost the ability to be bees. They have lost the pollen baskets on their legs.
So they can't even collect pollen.
Even if they wanted to collect food for their young, they physically can't carry it.
So they have to steal it.
They have to steal a workforce. The life cycle of a cuckoo bee is like a horror movie script.
Oh boy.
A female cuckoo wakes up later in the spring than the regular bumblebees. She waits until the regular colonies have established a workforce.
She lets them do the heavy lifting of building the nursery.
Right. Then she locates a nest, say, a Bombus terrestris nest. She enters.
Does she sneak in? Or is it a raid?
It varies, but often it is a violent takeover. Cuckoo bees are built for combat. Their exoskeleton is significantly thicker and harder than a normal bee's.
They're armored.
They're armored tanks. Their stingers are larger. Their mandibles are more jagged. She enters the nest and confronts the resident queen. It's a gladiator match.
Oh, wow.
The cuckoo bee will often maul the resident queen to death. Or, in some species, she just bullies the queen into submission, pushing her to the corner of the nest.
And the workers, the daughters of the original queen, why don't they swarm her?
They try, but the cuckoo bee has armor, so their stings often can't penetrate. And she has chemical weapons.
Of course she does.
She releases pheromones that mimic the queen's scent, but also suppress the workers' aggression. She effectively brainwashes the colony.
Look at me, I am the captain now.
Precisely. The workers, confused and chemically subdued, start feeding the cuckoo bee's larvae instead of their own sisters.
So her young take over.
The cuckoo larvae eat the food, grow up, and hatch. But they only hatch into males and new cuckoo queens.
No workers.
No workers. So the colony is doomed. The original workforce dies of old age. Because no new workers are being born, the nest collapses. But by then, the new generation of cuckoo queens has flown away to repeat the cycle next year.
It's parasitic genius, but it's brutal.
It's an evolutionary arms race. The host bees are evolving to recognize the invaders, and the invaders are evolving better disguises.
So the bumblebee has to survive the freezing cold, the complex physics of flight, and armored home invaders. But now they're facing a threat that they can't evolve fast enough to beat.
Us.
Us.
The decline. This is the part of the deep dive where the tone has to shift.
Yeah.
Because the data is alarming. Bumblebee ranges are shrinking across the northern hemisphere.
What is the main driver? Is it just habitat loss, generally?
It's more specific than that. It's the industrialization of the landscape. I want to draw a connection that people rarely make.
Okay.
The connection between the invention of the internal combustion engine and the starvation of the bumblebee.
Connect those dots.
Go back to 1910. Agriculture runs on horses. Millions of horses. What do horses eat?
Grass.
And clover, red clover. It's a high-protein nitrogen fixer. Farmers grew massive rotations of red clover to feed the horses that pulled the plows.
And bumblebees like clover.
Red clover is a deep flower. Honeybees can't really work it. Their tongues are too short. But long-tongued bumblebees love it. It was their primary fuel station.
Then the tractor arrives.
We invent the tractor. The tractor eats diesel, not clover. Within a few decades, red clover creates no value for the farmer. They switch to chemical fertilizers to grow pure grass for silage. The clover fields vanish.
So the bumblebees lost their grocery stores because we fired the horses.
In the UK alone, 97% of flower-rich grasslands were lost in the 20th century. That is a caloric catastrophe for a high-energy insect.
And then on top of the starvation, we poisoned the food that was left.
Neonicotinoids.
Right.
This is the second hammer blow. Neonicotinoids are a class of pesticide chemically related to nicotine. They are neurotoxins.
How do they work?
They bind to the nicotinic acetylcholine receptors in the insect's central nervous system. They overstimulate the nerves. In high doses, the insect goes into convulsions and dies. That's acute toxicity.
But farmers argue they don't use high doses. They use safe levels.
And this is where the nuance matters, the sublethal effects. The pesticide is systemic. You coat the seed, the plant grows, and the poison is inside the nectar and pollen.
So the bee drinks it.
It drinks it. It doesn't die. But it gets drunk.
Drunk.
Impaired. We talked about their intelligence earlier. The string pulling, the navigation, the learning. Neonicotinoids degrade those cognitive functions.
So a poison bee.
A poisoned bumblebee forgets the color of the flowers it needs. It forgets how to navigate home.
It gets lost.
It gets lost. Or it becomes inefficient. A study on Bombus terrestris showed that exposure to field-realistic levels of imidacloprid, a common neonico, reduced the production of new queens by 85%.
85%.
Imagine a human city where the birth rate drops by 85% in one generation. That is a collapse.
And it's worse for them.
Remember, unlike honeybees, bumblebees don't have thousands of backup workers. If a bumblebee queen is impaired, or if her small workforce gets lost and doesn't come back with food, the colony starves.
And we are seeing this happen in real time. Species like the rusty-patched bumblebee are disappearing.
The rusty-patched used to be everywhere in the U.S. Midwest. Now it's critically endangered. Franklin's bumblebee might already be extinct. We haven't seen one in years.
It's tragic because, culturally, we love them. We don't fear them like wasps. They are characters in our stories.
They are. The name Dumbledore, for instance.
J.K. Rowling?
She dug up an old English dialect word. Dumbledore means bumblebee. She pictured the character wandering the halls of Hogwarts, humming to himself.
It fits perfectly.
And Emily Dickinson wrote extensively about them. She contrasted the vanity of the bumblebee with the practicality of the honeybee. She saw the bumblebee as a creature of leisure, dressed in gold and purple.
Which is ironic now that we know they work harder, longer, and in colder conditions than the honeybee.
We projected our own feelings onto them. We saw slow and fuzzy and thought lazy. The reality is efficient and insulated. As we wrap this up, I want to touch on one final irony in the notes. We are actually breeding bumblebees now, right, for the tomato industry.
We are. It's a massive global trade. Factories produce millions of bumblebee nests in boxes and ship them to greenhouses all over the world.
But this solution is becoming a problem.
It's called pathogen spillover. These factory-farmed bees are genetically uniform and kept in high densities. Disease spreads easily. Crithidia, nosema, these are gut parasites.
And the bees escape the greenhouses.
They fly out the vents. They visit wildflowers near the greenhouse. They defecate on the flowers.
Oh, no.
Then a wild bumblebee, maybe a rare species, lands on that flower and picks up the industrial disease.
So we are exporting pandemics to the wild populations.
We are infecting the special forces with diseases brewed in the barracks. It's a major driver of decline in South America and Japan, where imported European bumblebees are wiping out native species.
It feels like we are dismantling a system we barely understand. That is the core message here. The bumblebee is a keystone. It supports the wildflowers that hold the soil together. It pollinates the crops that feed us. It operates in the rain and the cold when other pollinators hide.
So what is the actionable advice here? Aside from ban all pesticides, which is a slow political process, what does the average person do?
It's surprisingly simple. Embrace the mess.
The mess.
Bumblebees need messy homes. They need old mouse holes, piles of dry grass, upturned pots. A perfectly manicured lawn is a desert to them.
So leave a corner of your garden wild.
Exactly. And plant the fuel. Clover, lavender, foxglove. Plants with deep, complex flowers. Restore the fuel stations that the tractors took away.
So less lawnmower, more clover.
It's the easiest conservation work you'll ever do. Just do less work.
I think I can handle that. So to recap, they surf on air vortices, they heat their chests like engines, they see electric fields, they fight armored invaders, and they just need us to be a little bit messier in the garden.
That is the bumblebee in a nutshell.
Next time you hear that buzz, remember, it's not just a bug. It's a tiny, fuzzy, heat-seeking missile of biological engineering.
And we'd be lost without them.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Stay curious.